Thank you very much. Thank you for that. It's lovely to be here today and to see you all. And I was really kind of got my thoughts going when I saw what the theme was for today's talks, and it was history, her story, your story. And I put up there on the screen about great expectations and how does TV affect our expectations. And it all came from the story of Great Expectations. So if you wouldn't mind just... Now, when I was at school, we had to read Great Expectations as part of the exam syllabus. And all the books are kind of brought into the room and sort of thrown on the desks and then lobbed around at everybody who got a book. And they kind of had a cover not unsimilar to this one. And it didn't necessarily appeal to 14-year-old students. And it was thick. So we weren't engaging, put it that way. And we started reading the first chapter. Now, those of you who are a bit older, you'll probably remember, I don't know if we still do this in schools, but we had to read out loud in turn, which is just a horrible thing anyway. But we started reading out loud in turn. And by the time we got to the end of the first chapter, I was completely hooked on the book. Because everything about this book is about relationships. And even at that stage in my life, I was really interested in relationships. I think it might be because I'm an only child, and I was born in a caravan. My parents were slightly hippie-ish. So kind of relationships I just found really interesting. And in this book, the people were really weird, and their relationships were really weird. So if you have read Great Expectations, you'll know what I mean. And there's kind of Miss Havisham, who is grooming Estella to be this, person who's going to wreck relationships. And then there's poor Pip, who thinks he's better than everybody else when he comes into, a bit of good fortune, and then drops all the people who love him so he can climb the social ladder. And it all turns out in a way different to how possibly you'd expect. So it was a really good book. And it kind of gets me thinking today about expectations. What are our expectations for sex and relationships? Now, this book has been made into a number of films, because a lot of the ways we do stories now is we see films and we watch TV programs. And I would just like, if you wouldn't mind just clicking on. So in 1946, there was an advert for the film that was made of Great Expectations. And as you can see, pretty dull, black and white. You'd have gone to the cinema to see it. And it just has the two main characters kind of having a secretive chat. Now, if you wouldn't mind clicking on. In 1998, they made a new edition. Boy, did they sex it up. It's the same story, but they've really changed the kind of how they're going to get you to see it. And I think that's a massive impact that's happened in our society nowadays. We have become much more kind of socially conscious of our sexuality. And it's all about how sexy can I present myself, what's going on. And that's just a tiny example, but it's there all the time. And now we have TV that is on hundreds of channels all the time, day and night. And it's giving messages about relationships and sex. If you wouldn't mind just clicking on. Sex is everywhere. So I'm just going to click through some of these. Sorry, I'll just go this way and then I'll do it this way. This is a really interesting advert for toilet paper. I think she's looking slightly shocked at what he's presenting to her. This is another advert. Some of the girls in school have seen these. This is for a deodorant, and if you use this deodorant, women will be flocking to you. You are going to be so sexy. This advert is for a clothing company. Now, the advert doesn't really show the clothing, but it's really sexual in its manner of, drawing you in, and it had to be taken down. There were so many complaints about that advert. The next one, even if you're just jumping on the bus, okay, there could be adverts around you which are very sexual. And the next one, I love this one. If you want to become vegetarian, this is what it's like. And our last one here is just a still clip of a TV advert that has come out in the last few months for a well-known margarine company. And it's kind of presented like a little children's cartoon. It could be on CBeebies and you wouldn't think anything of it. And the little children run upstairs and they go into the room and, Mummy and Daddy are wrestling in bed. And this is for a margarine advert. You're like, this is very bizarre. So sex really is everywhere, and it's very much part of our culture. And I do think it is having this knock-on effect. Generation sex. If you are in this room and you are between the ages of 13 and 18, this is what you are being titled as. I got this title from a news report about sexual health issues with young people. And they're saying that this generation, this young generation, are the first generation that have kind of open access to everything to do with sex. TV, online, social media, it's there. And they're naming you as Generation Sex. Now, I think we're selling you short if that's all we think of you as, because there's a lot more to you wonderful young people than that. And if you have got young people, be aware that this is the kind of pressure that's been put on them, that they should be sexy all the time. So, next one. What young people are telling me, over the last year, I've been doing a kind of straw poll in schools and asking young people, where are you getting your information about sex and relationships? And at least 56%, I think probably more, but they didn't always put them on the post-it notes, were saying from TV programs. I also asked them, did you get it from your parents? 4%. Okay, we're letting them down, We need to be talking to them because they are getting so much information thrown at them. So we do need to be thinking about TV programs. So let's just shoot on. Embarrassing bodies. When this first came out, I was kind of addicted to it. And you kind of did wonder why people who said, oh, I've never shared this problem with anyone, doctor, would go on and then share it with the nation and usually film intimate parts of their bodies. So I am pleased that in TV programme we have become more open to discussing sexual health matters and how to stay safe, how to look after yourself, how to stay well. That's really important. That's a positive shift. But I think I've seen a negative shift as well. So if we could just click on. Okay, I'm going to use this programme, Friends. I suspect nearly everybody in the room has either seen Friends, heard of Friends, or caught an episode of it at some point. It is on the TV all the time, still on the TV, on a satellite channel. Every day you go in, it's on there. And the title, Friends, it's about relationships. Yeah, it's quite interesting. This was a massive hit programme between sort of 1994 2004. Millions of people saw it. The last episode has something like 52 million people watching it around the world. And it's all about how they interact with each other. Yet, although it's Friends, the sexual content in it was massive. Every single episode had some kind of sexual joke in it. It was either about same-sex relationships, pornography, casual sex, unplanned pregnancy, will you have a threesome? You name it, it was in there. So there was a lot of sexual content as well as the kind of relationship issues. And it was funny. It was brilliantly written, very well acted, but it was just that. It had a studio audience and it was a story, but it was a story that was on TV. But I do wonder whether it has an impact on how it makes us feel about relationships. And my gut feeling with Friends is if some of the things that had happened in those storylines had happened in real life, they wouldn't still be friends because it would be too much. So next one. This quote, highly sexualized behavior is the norm of teenage life. This was also part of this news article that I was looking at about Generation Sex. And I do think that's true. I am working with young people all the time. It doesn't mean they're all out there doing stuff, but there's this pressure on them to be sexual. 2 programs on the TV, The In-Betweeners. Very funny. Okay, very funny, I think, for me, 47, looking back, going, And Some Girls is a kind of female version of The In-Betweeners. These are actors, so it's a story again, but they are in their school uniforms and they are in the school setting, talking really explicitly about sex. They're not talking about relationships, they're talking about just the sexual side of things. And maybe this is pushing a message. I don't know. I can't prove it. I haven't clinically trialed this or anything like that, so I don't know. But the next one, please. This is another series that came out called Fresh Meat, which is about young people going off to university, and Freshers' Week is the classic time, apparently, to get your fresh meat. And so quite often, 2nd and 3rd year students will come back a week early when Freshers' Week is on because the fresh meat's out. And you think, wow, that's saying something big about what they think of their relationships. And the last one on that page, thank you. Son, Sex and Suspicious Parents. I have to admit, I was saying I did watch an episode last night. And this is the weirdest program. This is parents spying on their teenagers when they go off to have their sort of first holiday abroad. And again, very sexual. Not about relationships, it's all about just sex. So we're kind of missing one whole part. My job is an SRE teacher, Sex and Relationships Education. That's what it's known of as part of the curriculum. I really have a problem with the way round we've got that. I think it should be relationships and sex education. Let's start with the relationships and then move on. So next one. This is another program that's just come out. Caught it, I've never seen it before, midday on a satellite channel, Sleeping with the Family. And it all revolves around a teenager, say a girl, bringing her boyfriend in, and he stays in their house. And it's all about, where's he going to sleep? You're like, whoa. You know, why would you have this program? But again, it's passing on this message that it's all about you have to be getting up to stuff, have to be doing stuff sexually, and not talking about the relationship. It's just concentrating on one thing. Next thing. Oh, TOWIE, The Only Way is Essex, MIC, Made in Chelsea. These are really interesting programs. They are scripted reality soap operas. That's what they're called. But they come across, if you watch them, as their reality programs, and they're kind of just following you with a camera, and this is your everyday life, this is your reality. But actually, they are scripted, they are edited. And the whole point of these programs is to kind of show how everybody reacts with each other, how they relate to each other. And quite often, and this is my interpretation of these programs, is it gives a message that relationships are totally disposable. Doesn't matter. You just move on. So next one, thank you very much. I love this quote. I want our relationship to be exactly like whichever perfect celebrity hasn't broken up yet. And I think we have kind of got that view about relationships. Now, what warms my heart when I talk to young people in schools, they say, yeah, we're quite interested in the sex side. That's really interesting. But actually, we want relationships. We want to know about what it feels like to fall in love. How does it feel? When will I know? And I'd like a relationship where there's trust and commitment, and we have fun, and there's kindness. And they're looking for those relationships. But the messages they're getting, and remember 56% at least of them are getting it from the TV, that's not in there. It's all about being sexy. So next one, please. This is a couple. You may have heard them. Some of the younger people, I can see a few people smirking. Tom Fletcher, he's from a band called McFly, and they're not having reality TV programs follow them around or anything like that. But they do post quite a lot of stuff online, him and his wife, Giovanna. And they met when they were in school. And they've gone through some tough times, but now they're married, and now they have a little baby. And they've got some lovely, lovely clips online. His wedding speech makes me cry. But they're kind of not, they're not really seen as worth putting on the TV or stuff like that. But they are fantastic, and they're a good example. And I love the fact that we have got young people, younger generations saying, we do want commitment, we do want love, we do want to look after each other. It's not just about the sex. The next one, please. Okay, £50 note. I happen to have one in my pocket. It's nice and crisp. So I have a £50 note. Would you mind telling me how much is it worth? Shout it out. £50. Okay, I'm folding it in half. How much is it worth now? I'm going to fold it into quarters. How much is it worth now? I'm going to crush it up, and there's a rather dodgy bin, and I'm chucking it away. How much is it worth now? It's still worth £50. It's still valuable. But we're kind of treating relationships a bit like this. TV, a lot of the programming, is giving us this message. Just chuck them away. Chuck relationships away. They're not valuable. They're disposable. We don't need them. And that's the real fib to be telling people. Relationships are tricky. I think when Sue was talking about all the relationships of the people who work together. But we can learn so much from it. And they're so rewarding. I don't want to just be talking to young people about sex. I want to be talking about relationships. I want all of us to be talking about relationships with each other, old or new. So, great expectations. Coming back to it. I really want all of us to have great expectations. I especially want those who are a bit older, who've got children, to help our young people have great expectations of relationships. Okay? If you're young, I want you to have great expectations. You're not being weird if you want good relationships. It's your story about the relationships you're going to be in, how your love life is going to be. So you want to make it a good one, and you want to have good expectations for that, really great expectations. That doesn't mean you don't have to be sexy. Sexiness can be really exciting, as I do say to students, and they were like, ooh. But it doesn't have to be your defining factor. A person is so much more than just their sexiness. It's their whole being, their character, what they believe, what the values they have, where they want to go with their life, what they want to do, what their gifts are. And the sexiness can be a really interesting part of who you are, but it doesn't have to be the defining factor. So what I would say to you is when you're watching TV and stuff, please just be really conscious of kind of messages they're always giving us, that relationships, you can throw them away. Because I don't think that's the reality, and I think a lot of people have really great expectations of relationships, and that's what they're aiming for. Thank you very much.